My name is Marina Evans. I'm 32 years old, and last Christmas, I walked back into my family's mansion in Burlington, Vermont, knowing I was about to destroy everything they thought they owned. The dining room looked exactly the same as it did when I left. Long oak table, heavy crystal glasses, the kind of room designed to make people feel small if they didn't belong. My pulse was racing, but my face stayed calm. My father sat at the head of the table, posture rigid, control radiating off him like cold air. My mother sat beside him, hands folded, eyes already distant. My older brother Bryce leaned back in his chair, smug as always. My older sister Lori sat straight-backed, lips tight, calculating. My younger sister Aspen barely looked up from her phone. No one smiled when I walked in. That was fine. I didn't come home for warmth. Halfway through dinner, my father stood and cleared his throat. His voice was flat, rehearsed. "I've sold Pure Harvest Company. The buyer takes over next month." The room exploded. Bryce slammed his hand on the table. "You did what?" Lori's voice sliced through the air. "That was our legacy!" Aspen gasped. "My brand deals! This ruins everything!" I stayed quiet. I lifted my wine glass and watched them unravel. My father smirked, enjoying the chaos. He thought he'd won. Bryce demanded, "Who's buying it?" I set my glass down and met his eyes. That would be me. Silence fell like a brick wall. They didn't know who I had become. They didn't know what I'd built. And they had no idea this moment had been 10 years in the making. Growing up in Burlington, I was taught that family was everything. That lie lasted until I learned the truth. I was raised in a sprawling Vermont mansion, surrounded by orchards and farmland owned by our family's organic food company, Pure Harvest Company. It was an empire built on sustainability, marketed as ethical, wholesome, and principled. Behind closed doors, it was something else entirely. My father, Stanley Evans, was the CEO. Iron-fisted. His word was law. Decisions weren't discussed, they were delivered. Disagreement wasn't tolerated. It was punished with silence. My mother, Doris, drifted through life like a ghost. Warm smile, no spine. She avoided conflict like it might physically harm her. My older brother Bryce believed the world owed him success. Loud, charming, reckless. He loved credit, but hated work. My older sister Lori was sharper, more dangerous. She didn't raise her voice. She cut people down quietly and smiled while doing it. Aspen, the youngest, lived inside her phone. Influence mattered more than substance, appearances over effort. And then there was Grandma Evelyn Brooks. She was the only one who saw me. Pure Harvest was her dream. She believed sustainable farming could be profitable without destroying the land or exploiting people. When I was 7, I followed her through the orchards while she talked about soil health, crop rotation, and long-term thinking. "You see patterns," she'd tell me. "That's rare." By 15, I was sketching business ideas in notebooks, supply chains, expansion models, ethical sourcing. Grandma fueled that fire. She taught me that building something real took patience, intelligence, and courage. At family dinners, I tried to contribute. "What if we expand into Canada with local partnerships?" I suggested once. Bryce laughed. "You dream too big, kid." Lori rolled her eyes. "Stick to school." My father didn't even look up. That pattern never changed. The first real betrayal came when I was 17. I presented a fully developed expansion plan, budgets, logistics, projections. Before my father could respond, Bryce interrupted. "We're already working on that." He wasn't. Weeks later, I watched him and Lori pitch my plan, word for word, to my father. Their names on the slides, my work erased. When I confronted them, Bryce laughed. "Prove it," Lori sneered.
"You're not cut out for this."
My father praised their initiative. My mother stayed silent. Something broke inside me that day. By the time I graduated from the University of Vermont, I wasn't just invisible. I was expendable. I came back to Burlington with a degree, experience, and a proposal that could have transformed the company. Pre-packaged organic meals for urban professionals. Research-backed, scalable, profitable. My father glanced at it once. Too niche. Bryce mocked it. Lori dismissed it. My mother said nothing. I was told to handle inventory. That night, I packed one bag and left. I didn't run. I reset. Montpelier was cold, lonely, and exactly what I needed. I arrived with a few $100s and a decision. If they wouldn't listen, I'd build something they couldn't ignore. I became J.M. Harper, a name with no baggage. The first year was brutal. Freelance work, ramen dinners, nights spent designing systems I couldn't afford to launch yet. But I was free. And slowly, Green Wave Organics took shape. A sustainable distribution platform connecting small farmers to urban markets. Subscription-based, data-driven, ethical. My best friend Ellie Thompson believed in me when I couldn't. She helped me brand, pitch, and survive. By 25, Green Wave was profitable. By 26, it was visible. And that's when my family noticed. They didn't know it was me, but they knew I was a threat. So they tried to destroy me. By the time Green Wave Organics started gaining real traction, I was 26 and running on caffeine, adrenaline, and pure stubbornness. For the first time in my life, the numbers backed me up. Orders were up, retention rates were strong, farmers trusted us, customers were subscribing month after month. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something sustainable, something scalable. Blogs started mentioning J.M. Harper as a quiet disruptor in the Northeast organic food scene. No photos, no interviews, just results. And that anonymity was intentional, because deep down, I knew my family. If they ever realized who I really was, they wouldn't come after my ideas. They'd come after me. For a while, it felt like I was winning. Then the call came. His name was Todd Brooks, a Boston-based investor with a reputation for backing early-stage food logistics startups. Ellie had introduced us after a regional food expo, and from the first conversation, he sounded impressed. "You've built something efficient," he said. "Clean model, low waste, strong margins." He was talking about a $200,000 investment, enough to stabilize cash flow, hire properly, and expand distribution beyond Vermont. We scheduled a meeting in Burlington, neutral territory, close enough to my roots, far enough that no one would suspect anything. I prepared like my life depended on it, because it did. Financials triple-checked, growth projections stress-tested, risk scenarios outlined. Ellie helped me polish the pitch deck until it was bulletproof. "You're ready," she told me the night before. "You've earned this." Walking into that meeting, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Confidence. Todd shook my hand firmly. We talked strategy, expansion, logistics. He laughed at my jokes, nodded at the numbers. Then his tone shifted. "I've heard some concerns," he said carefully, "about your reliability." My stomach dropped. Concerns? I repeated. From where? He hesitated. There are whispers that you've mismanaged funds, that Greenwave might not be as stable as it appears. I kept my voice steady, but my heart was racing. That's not true, I said. My books are clean. I can show you everything. He nodded slowly. I'll need to do more due diligence. Translation: the deal was on ice. When I walked out of that building, the air felt heavier than it had when I arrived. Ellie met me at a coffee shop down the street. One look at my face and she knew. What happened? I told her everything, every word. She went quiet, the dangerous kind of quiet. That doesn't sound organic, she finally said. Someone's poisoning the well. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself investors hear rumors all the time, that it would blow over. It didn't. Within 2 weeks, 2 more potential investors backed out. Same vague language, same concerns. That's when I started digging. Late nights turned into early mornings as I combed through industry forums, anonymous blog posts, and comment threads. It was subtle, carefully worded warnings about risk and instability. Nothing provable, just enough to plant doubt. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The IP addresses. They traced back to Burlington. I hired a tech friend to dig deeper. What he found confirmed what I already knew in my bones. The accounts were linked to devices registered to Pure Harvest Company. One email chain mentioned Lori's office login. Another had Bryce's name attached. They didn't know J.M. Harper was me, but they knew Greenwave was a threat. So they did what they'd always done: sabotage, undermine, erase. The fallout was brutal. Cash flow dried up almost overnight. Suppliers demanded faster payments. A key partner pulled out entirely. I had to lay off half my team. The day I told them, I locked myself in the bathroom afterward and cried until my chest hurt. Ellie stayed. She always stayed. We're not done, she told me, hands gripping the edge of my desk. They don't get to decide this. But inside, something had shifted. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was personal. I started seeing my family's fingerprints everywhere. Every obstacle, every closed door, every whisper. Bryce and Lori had spent years dismissing me, stealing from me, silencing me. Now they were trying to bury me. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself how to prove my worth and started asking how to win. I began researching Pure Harvest in ways I never had before. Supplier lists, distribution partners, logistics contracts, weak points. Names kept coming up. Rebecca Holt, a vegetable supplier out of Rutland. Michael Grant, a grain distributor in New Hampshire. Sarah Lee, who ran their East Coast delivery routes. These weren't just partners. They were the backbone of the company. If you controlled them, you controlled the flow. Ellie noticed the change in me. You're not just rebuilding, she said one night, watching me mark up a spreadsheet. You're planning something. I didn't deny it. They tried to end me, I said quietly. I'm not letting that stand. I approached Rebecca first, as J.M. Harper. I offered better margins, faster payments, eco-friendly packaging that aligned with her values. She hesitated. She'd worked with Pure Harvest for years, so I showed her the fine print in her contract, clauses that quietly favored the company at her expense. She signed within a month. Michael was tougher, loyal, old school. I flew to New Hampshire and pitched him over dinner, showed him data, projections, real numbers. Your margins could double, I told him, and you'd still be supporting sustainable practices. He took 2 weeks to think. Then he called and said yes. Sarah was the hardest. She knew her leverage. She knew Pure Harvest depended on her. I met her in Boston with a clean offer: exclusivity, expansion, and equity. You're outpacing them, I told her honestly. They just don't see it yet. She signed 6 months later. By the time I was done, Pure Harvest's supply chain wasn't theirs anymore. They just didn't know it yet. The final piece fell into place by accident. A disgruntled employee reached out anonymously, said he'd heard I was shaking things up. He sent over internal documents. Buried in the contracts was a clause my grandmother had put in decades ago: a veto power, allowing the company to block suppliers from switching if they maintained majority control of the supply chain. It was supposed to protect the company. It became its undoing. Because they no longer had majority control, I locked in long-term contracts, bought out smaller suppliers, closed every escape route. By the time my father realized what was happening, it was too late. And when the invitation to Christmas dinner arrived, I knew exactly why. He was going to sell, and I was going to buy. There's a moment people don't talk about when you're winning. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet and terrifying. For me, it came late one night in my Montpelier apartment, sitting on the kitchen floor with my laptop open, surrounded by spreadsheets and half-empty coffee cups. Green Wave Organics was technically alive again. Barely. I'd stabilized the supply chain, secured contracts Pure Harvest didn't even realize they'd lost. Revenue was climbing, slowly, cautiously, like an animal that didn't trust the ground beneath it. On paper, I was winning. Inside, I was exhausted. I hadn't taken a real day off in years. I slept in 3-hour bursts. My phone buzzed constantly. Suppliers, lawyers, logistics partners. Every conversation felt like a negotiation. Every silence felt like danger. And the worst part? I couldn't tell anyone who I really was. Not my suppliers, not my partners, not even my own employees. I was J.M. Harper to the world, Marina Evans only in my head. Some nights I wondered if I'd disappeared completely. Ellie was the only one who saw the cracks. She came over one evening with pizza and wine, sat across from me, and didn't say anything for a long time. "You're burning out," she finally said. "I don't have time to," I replied automatically. She shook her head. "That's exactly the problem." I wanted to argue. Instead, my eyes filled with tears I hadn't given myself permission to feel. "I just wanted them to see me," I said quietly. "Once. Just once." Ellie reached across the table. "They never will. Not the way you want." Her words hit harder than any betrayal, because she was right. My father didn't withhold approval because I lacked ability. He withheld it because acknowledging me would mean admitting he'd been wrong. Bryce and Lori didn't sabotage me because they feared failure. They sabotaged me because my success exposed their emptiness. And my mother had chosen silence every single time it mattered. That night, I stopped pretending this was about validation. It was about closure. The doubts crept in anyway. What if I went too far? What if I became exactly what I hated? What if winning meant losing whatever softness I had left? I stared at my reflection in the darkened window and barely recognized myself. Then I thought about Grandma Evelyn. about her hands in the soil, her belief that systems could be fair if designed with care, that strength didn't require cruelty. She hadn't raised me to destroy. She'd raised me to build better. And suddenly, the path forward became clear. I wasn't going to take Pure Harvest out of spite. I was going to take responsibility for what it had become. The decision settled over me like calm after a storm. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. I reached out to a private equity firm based in New York, one that specialized in quiet acquisitions and operational turnarounds. I didn't pitch drama. I pitched numbers, logistics, efficiencies. They didn't ask many questions. They saw what my family had failed to see for years. Green Wave wasn't just competitive, it was superior. Within weeks, we structured a buyout vehicle, clean, legal, untraceable back to me, for now. Every document carried the name J.M. Harper. Every signature moved me closer to the end game. At the same time, cracks were forming inside Pure Harvest. Suppliers delayed deliveries, distribution costs climbed, customer complaints increased. The brand's image, once pristine, began to dull. My father noticed. He just didn't understand why. I heard through industry channels that he was frustrated, angry, talking about retirement, about selling. The empire he'd controlled with fear was slipping through his fingers, and he had no idea his own daughter was holding the other end. When the Christmas invitation arrived, it wasn't warm. It was formal, polite, strategic, a final attempt at control. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part of me smiled. The weeks leading up to Christmas were surreal. I finalized the acquisition terms in quiet conference rooms, reviewed legal contingencies, prepared disclosures that would detonate like grenades when revealed. I gathered evidence. Bryce's embezzlement, Lori's whisper campaign, contracts that proved my control of the supply chain, not to destroy them publicly, but to ensure they couldn't rewrite the story afterward. Ellie helped me rehearse what I'd say. "What if you freeze?" she asked gently. "I won't," I said. And I knew it was true, because fear had already taken everything it could from me. The night before I left for Burlington, I packed carefully. No dramatics, no anger, just facts. I placed Grandma's old photograph into my bag, the one of her standing in the orchard, sun on her face, dirt under her nails. "This is for you," I whispered. "Not revenge, resolution." Driving toward Burlington, I felt strangely light. 10 years of effort, 10 years of silence, 10 years of being underestimated, all of it converging into a single moment. I wasn't going home as the daughter they dismissed. I was walking in as the woman they never saw coming. And this time, I wouldn't leave quietly. Christmas dinner was already halfway through when I realized something strange. I wasn't nervous. The chandelier above the dining table cast the same golden light it always had, the same silverware, the same crystal glasses, the same sense of performance that had defined every holiday in this house. But this time, I wasn't performing for them. I was observing. My father sat at the head of the table, posture stiff, jaw tight. He'd aged more than I expected. Control does that to people when it starts slipping away. My mother barely touched her food. She kept smoothing the tablecloth like she was trying to erase the tension with her hands. Bryce talked too loudly, laughed too hard, the way people do when they sense something is wrong but don't know what. Lori watched everyone else instead of eating, calculating, always calculating. Aspen scrolled through her phone, half present, half bored, as if this dinner was just another background obligation. And then there was me, 32 years old, calm, grounded, ready. My father cleared his throat and stood. The room fell silent instantly. Old habits die hard. "I've made a decision," he said, lifting his glass. "I've sold Pure Harvest Co." The words hung in the air for a split second before detonating. Bryce slammed his fork down. "You sold it? Without telling us?" Lori's voice cut sharp. "That company is our legacy!" Aspen gasped. "My partnerships, my brand is tied to Pure Harvest." My mother said nothing. I took a slow sip of my wine. My father raised his hand, enjoying the chaos more than he should have. "The buyer takes over next month. None of you will be involved." Bryce stood up. "Who the hell would buy it right now?" That was my cue. I set my glass down. That would be me. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was absolute. My father turned toward me slowly, confusion creasing his face. "What did you say?" I stood. "J.M. Harper is Marina Evans." My father's hand shook. Bryce's mouth fell open. Lori went pale. Aspen dropped her phone onto the table with a dull clatter. "I own Greenwave Organics," I continued evenly, "and I've purchased Pure Harvest Co." For the first time in my life, no one interrupted me. Lori recovered first. "This is a joke." I reached into my bag and placed the acquisition documents on the table. Signed, funded, finalized. Bryce laughed, panicked. "That's impossible." "So was stealing ideas from your sister and passing them off as your own," I replied, and slid another folder toward my father. Bank statements, transaction records. $202,000, I said, siphoned from company accounts into Bryce's personal investments. My father picked up the papers, his face drained of color. "Explain this," he demanded. Bryce stammered. No words came. I turned to Lori. "And you," I said calmly, "ran a whisper campaign to sabotage my investors. Anonymous posts traced directly to your office IP, emails coordinating damage control." Her jaw clenched. "You have no proof." I slid the printouts across the table. Her smirk vanished. "And that supplier veto clause Grandma put in place?" I added. "Useless now. Rebecca Holt, Michael Grant, and Sarah Lee all work with me. Your supply chain belongs to Greenwave." My father's shoulders slumped. In that moment, I saw it clearly. Not the powerful CEO, not the patriarch, just a man who had lost control of the system he ruled through fear. My mother finally looked up. Her eyes were wet. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, an apology maybe, but no words came. Aspen whispered, "Marina, why?" I looked at her gently. "Because all of you counted me out." Bryce exploded. "You can't do this!" Lori snapped. "We'll fight you in court." I met their eyes without flinching. "Try." My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. "My contracts are airtight, and unlike you, I planned for this." I picked up my bag and walked out. I didn't look back. The aftermath was quiet, brutally quiet. I assumed control of Pure Harvest the following month. Bryce was terminated immediately. No severance, no protection. His financial misconduct followed him everywhere. He ended up taking a warehouse job in town, hauling crates for a company he once thought beneath him. Lori lasted longer, 3 weeks. Her reputation collapsed when vendors refused to work with her. She took a junior marketing role in Boston. No power, no influence. Aspen asked for a job. I offered her a warehouse clerk position. She accepted without protest. Reality had finally arrived. My mother called once. She cried, asked if we could talk. I told her I wished her peace. I didn't go back. My father never reached out. I wasn't surprised. I merged Green Wave Organics with Pure Harvest. We rebuilt everything: ethical sourcing, transparent contracts, sustainable logistics. The company my grandmother had envisioned before fear took over. Ellie joined as creative director. We expanded into Europe within 2 years. I founded the Evelyn Brooks Foundation, funding young women building sustainable food businesses, especially those who'd been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated. Every grant I signed felt like a quiet thank you. I don't tell this story because I hate my family. I tell it because I survived them. Because so many women are taught to shrink, to wait, to earn approval that was never coming. Justice didn't come from revenge. It came from competence, from patience, from strategy, from refusing to disappear. If your family betrays you, if your work is ignored, if your value is questioned, don't beg for a seat at the table. Build your own. And when they finally notice, make sure it's too late for them to stop you.